The year was 1975. The Vietnam War just ended. Microsoft was founded and relations warmed between the United States and Moscow following a joint space mission. But most importantly of all, at least for this video, this is the first year we have modern data for solar panels, both price and efficiency. It's a bit anticlimactic, I know. As years turn to decades, you see the price decrease exponentially. I mean, our world in data even offers the option to sort it logarithmically, which is kind of comical. Despite this graph, solar has received a lot of talk, and reasonably so. There are so many potential problems and ways for it to go wrong. Intermittency, transmission, batteries, China, the price of natural gas, land use, disposal and recycling, lithium availability, poverty, general climate, and everything in between. Got it? Good. The haters aren't wrong. Solar does have a lot of problems. But then explain this. Oh, and also this. Solar power generation has more than doubled in the United States since 2019. The same has also happened globally. This is how solar kicks ass and why many of us have been so wrong. Like anything in the world, well, it's complicated. More or less, multiple factors have converged that have created an environment beneficial to renewables, but especially solar. As solar became cheaper, it became a realistic alternative to other sources of energy, notably coal, nuclear, and especially oil, which, no duh, is how economics works. But it affects more than consumers. The past decade has seen geopolitical tensions rise in Asia and blow up, literally, in Europe. Many countries are now much more concerned with relying on other potential hostile nations for energy. The two main countries in this regard, China and Russia, are actually in the same bucket for different reasons. The former is now the world's largest consumer of electricity, but they import the vast majority of their petroleum from the Middle East, the world's most stable region. While their electric grid is nearly independent from oil directly, gas is used in every other step of the chain. No oil doesn't just mean no gas for cars and trucks and trains and planes, but also the complete breakdown of China's energy system all the same. Ooh, that was kinda nice. Moreover, one of China's goals for the coming years is to reduce air pollution. Transitioning from coal to solar would be a great step in that direction as well, and kill two birds with one stone. Because of this, Chinese policymakers have pursued solar and other renewables very strongly. And now, China is the #1 country for solar. Russia differs a lot. Surprising no one, Moscow is not exactly a solar superpower like China. Russia is, however, one of the world's largest oil and natural gas exporters, especially to the somewhat wealthy countries of Central and Eastern Europe. At least until the invasion of Ukraine. Sanctions following Russia's attack led to an incredibly high oil and especially natural gas prices. As you can imagine, many countries once reliant on Russia were now much more motivated to invest in alternatives. Not only to protect the bottom line for consumers and businesses, but for national security reasons. Despite Europe's geography, solar has benefited on the continent. Now don't get me wrong, nuclear, unfortunately coal, and oil from elsewhere has still filled in most of the missing Russian gas. But solar became a much larger part in the more diversified fuel mix. Other forms of government policy, like incentives, have also boosted solar greatly. Many of the world's governments offer tax rebates to individuals, grants to organizations, and directives to be finally fossil fuel free by a certain date in the future. The IRA in America contains a 30% tax credit on top of a patchwork system of state and local policies. Most consequently to solar has been FITs. Feed-in tariffs are present in numerous countries like Japan, Pakistan, Australia, Canada, and many more. They essentially are government-subsidized contracts to energy producers, guaranteeing access to the grid and stable prices, which historically has enabled the build-out of solar even if the technology wasn't yet there. The idea being that the build-out would in part provide the necessary economy of scale to enable a drop in prices. It seems to have worked. As a cherry on top, solar power is free. While operationalizing solar has plummeted, no one owns the sun. The fuel itself is free, making it much more cost competitive than other sources of energy. Now, these are solid reasons why solar has performed well thus far. But these are generally well known and accounted for. Any idiot, like yours truly, can go on Our World and Data and check out the price decrease. The real question many have for solar is how it defeated its many problems. Here are some of them. Is solar growing as much as it appears to be, or is it just nameplate capacity? And if so, how is generation still growing despite the climate of where solar is generally deployed? And most importantly, how is solar power performing so well despite the intermittency problem? Let's address them in order. To some, Germany is a world leader in renewable energy, especially solar, while to others it is actually a case study in what can go wrong. I think the latter interpretation is more accurate. Germany's energy policy has been pretty stupid as of late. First relying on the Russians, axing nuclear power, and then finally the death blow. Deutschland, don't make fun of me, has ostensibly installed more than enough nameplate capacity in solar power to generate electricity for the entire country. However, as a share of electricity generation, solar was only 12% in 2023. Not bad, among the top in the world even, especially considering Germany's size, but not nearly worth the investment or even close to capacity. Germany is simply not a sunny nation. One of the few good things I can say about German energy policy is the lignite issue. While much was made of Germany's return to the dirty coal following Russia's invasion, the country has already seen coal decline as a share of electricity production in 2023, and the data appears to be holding in 2024. So the gotcha by many observers, observer is such a pretentious term by the way, that Germany gave up on nuclear and clean-ish gas for lignite after the invasion appears to be already reversing. Now, the good news. I've spent the better part of a minute dunking on Germany's investments in solar. You are probably thinking, how does this bode well for solar? Well, outside of Germany, photovoltaic has been pursued in a more balanced way, as part of the solution and not the solution. Even better, most countries in the world get more sun than Germany on average, as they have geographies more suitable to solar like Spain, Australia, Chile, Vietnam, Brazil, Turkey, and more who have seen solar skyrocket the past few years. In short, don't focus on capacity, focus on generation, which thankfully seems to be the zeitgeist right now. Outside of Germany, solar electric generation is booming, not just capacity. The next question is just as interesting and actually ties to the last point. A significant share of the capacity being added is in the wealthiest nations in the world, who are disproportionately located in the northern hemisphere, and thus not an ideal climate for solar. But yet, generation is still rising. The reason is that solar is generally being applied where the climate makes sense, again with the exception of Germany. These are the top 20 solar power producers in 2023. You can probably already see some patterns. Some countries are simply more acclimated to solar. Some have national security concerns regarding energy. And some are the wealthiest countries in the world who believe they must play a role in tackling climate change. Most are in more than one bucket. Solar generation is rising exponentially, and part of that increase is because it is generally being applied where it works. And lastly, there is the intermittency problem, probably the most well known, and for good reason. This is what solar generation looks like on a seasonal timescale in the United States, the world's second largest consumer of electricity. Demand peaks in the winter in the northern US when people use their heating systems. Makes sense. But it also peaks in the south during midday, when people are blasting their air conditioners, because it's hotter than hell. It gets worse though. This is what solar generation looks like on a daily timescale. The problem is that peak demand looks like this. This is even being generous because this generation profile was based off of California's grid, one of the sunniest states. This is called the intermittency problem. Solar is just not produced when it is used. The common solution to this has been batteries. Create an excess supply of solar during the day when it's nice and sunny, and then discharge it later. While California gets dunked on a lot, they are actually leading the way in batteries. Statewide, renewables are able to supply the entire state's energy needs during the day. Wildly, electricity prices can even be negative. I don't know what you were doing on April 16th this year, but it was a big day for the Golden State. For the first time, batteries were the largest contributor to the grid during the early evening. But the best part is this. It keeps happening. This is a graph of electricity supply on April 19th, 2024, according to the system operator for the California grid, just 3 days later. Batteries absorbed energy from the grid during peak supply and then discharged it during peak demand, exactly as intended. You can see just how present renewables already are in California. Overall, batteries are way cheaper than they were in the past and appear to be working. Indeed, comparing battery installations for the first 5 months of this year compared to 2023, battery installations are up 346%, the fastest on record and not even including base effect. That isn't to say, though, that they have been the entire solution. While they have gotten better, lithium poses problems. Concerns about its availability, price, and chemistry are commonplace. Other batteries, like zinc for example, seem promising, but there are reasons we haven't turned to them yet. There is more than just batteries, though, as part of the solution. Given the issue with solar and renewables in general is intermittency, grids and stations across the US and elsewhere have simply used other sources to fill in the gap. You might think this is an indictment against solar, but no one ever really believed that solar should be 100% of the grid. It can't be. We should not make the same mistake Germany made. Obsessing that one piece of technology will save us is stupid. Since most of the variation in solar output is predictable, turning on other sources when we need to is generally a pretty good solution. Known as system balancing, the most boring term ever, it has worked wonders for augmenting US renewables. Naturally, some are better than others, and these are some of the most common. Rice, not the crop obviously, but instead reciprocating internal combustion engines. Don't worry, this isn't an engineering video. But essentially, these relatively small facilities use extremely cheap natural gas for power, and while not carbon-free, it is clean-ish. The best part is that because they're small, they can be ramped online really quickly, and natural gas is dirt cheap, at least in America. Hydropower is very popular as well. It's inexpensive, clean, and can be ramped up quickly, though it does require water. That might be an issue. I had nowhere else to put this, but advances in weather forecasting have also played a major role in helping solar. When we can predict cloud coverage and rain more accurately, ramping up system balancing is significantly easier and reduces the potential for blackouts and brownouts. But there is one more aspect of solar's incredible past few decades. As mentioned previously, China and the United States are the world's largest consumers of electricity, and frankly, it's not even close. Just the two are nearly half. The United States is arguably the wealthiest nation in the world, and the third largest. China is 4 times the size, and while not nearly as wealthy, is a manufacturing juggernaut, which takes a lot of juice. Coincidentally, the relationship between the two has become strained in recent years, as issues over trade, tech, and Taiwan all float to the surface. The United States is in a security mood at the moment as well. They are trying to pursue green policies for the sake of global climate. But China is also the world's largest producer of solar power and basically everything that feeds into solar panels. The reliance on China puts the issue in the crosshairs of America's environmental movement and her broader concern for economic security. fixing the solar debate within the most important geopolitical contest in the world right now, China's and America's Thucydides trap. Only time will tell if it helps the world or hinders it. Thanks for watching. Please give me feedback. I'm a small channel who really needs it. I would like to make my content better. Thanks.